So in Colorado, for kids 10 to 18, suicide is the leading cause of death. That changed in 2019 and became the number one leading cause of death, above accidents, which include car wrecks and drownings and overdoses. We're not alone in this. This is across Colorado, this is across our country, but we pay a lot of attention in moments like this. So to help us, we're bringing Megan Fox up. Megan, thank you for being here. Megan moved here from Seattle a couple years ago, and she's a clinical psychologist. She specializes in kids 12 and up, and parents, and emerging adults, and just got her PhD recently. So thanks for being here and talking with us.
Hi guys, I'm also a 5th generation Colorado native, so I am Colorado pride all the way through. But I'm here tonight just to start and to open some conversation. This is the beginning of many conversations that need to be happening, and we want to continue to open that up. And so the first thing is I'm going to be up here and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to hopefully provide some resources, some support, give you maybe a glimpse into some teenage world. But it's a glimpse and it's a start. And this is by no means the beginning, or it's by no means the end. It's just the beginning of these conversations. And with that, I'm going to be hanging around at the end to talk more. If you guys have individual questions, we'll open up for some Q&A here. We also do have some signups in the back. If you guys are interested in having more of these conversations, having more support going forward. And so that's kind of my first point in this is we are here to provide support for you guys tonight, to honor and to normalize the place that you guys are coming in, the emotions that you guys are carrying in this place. Like we've said, I work with a lot of the teens up here. I work with a lot of the parents and the families. And what we do in times of this is I get a whiteboard out, massive wall, and I have them start writing down all the different emotions that they're feeling. Anger, sad, frustration, irritability, grief. And I have them and we look at it and we say, all these emotions are okay. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel. And all the different emotions that are coming up right now, it's okay. And I know as parents, and seeing this and seeing your kid and seeing this valley, it's gonna kick up different emotions. And so the first thing is just to honor and to normalize your own emotions that you're feeling. Because they're real, they're palpable, and they are a sign of love. They're a sign for love for your kid, love for each other's kids, love for this community. And so to honor that you guys can have that, and to really hold space for that. And a big piece of that is what, kind of big point in this is co-regulation. That's one of the biggest, I think, is a lot of you guys as parents can remember what it was to bring home your baby for the first time and hold them in your arms and be panicked, terrified of this little thing. And immediately what does your kid start doing? That baby at that time starts crying because you're freaked out. So it's freaked out. And so we all had the best friends too that we hand it to, the baby. And they're like, and immediately kid starts crying because they pick up on your cues. You're adolescent, similar, it's the exact same thing. They're a big baby and they're big bodies at this point. They're gonna pick up and they're gonna feel what emotions you're feeling. And so they're gonna regulate off of you and how you're regulating. So if you're angry and if you're anxious, that's okay. And if you're trying to push that away, they're gonna notice that and they're gonna pick it up. And so the best things you guys can do at this point is to honor your own space, honor the emotions that are kicking up for you and what you're working through, and to hold that space so that your kid knows that it's also okay for them too. So that they know it's okay for them to feel a variety of different emotions and that those are okay and it's normal in these moments. And so a big piece of that too is modeling. We talk a lot about this, and your kid's gonna learn how to process grief and how to understand it through seeing how you do it. They're not gonna say it, but they're watching. And they're seeing how you guys are responding, how you guys are holding your emotions, how you guys are processing this, and they're paying attention. And so model for them what you wanna see, and what behaviors and what ways, and how to have these conversations. And we're gonna talk about how to have these conversations, different pieces, but the best thing you can kind of do is model in that. And so that means taking care of yourselves, doing what you guys need to do in this period and in this time to have yourselves be managing a lot. How can you guys care for yourselves, care for your families, care for this community, and do what's needed? And a lot of that's pouring into who you are, doing the self-care that you need to do, whatever that looks like, whether that's prayer, journal, talking with your friends, taking time so that they know that they can do the same, and they don't need to continue to kind of push it. A big piece that I kind of want to share within this and talk about within co-regulation and modeling and feeling our emotions and you guys feeling them is a piece of the teenage brain. So our teenage brain, I don't know if you guys know this, your brains don't actually fully develop until you're 25 if you're a female and 28 if you're a male. And so your kid's brain is not fully developed and it's trying to process something that is incredibly difficult. And they are doing it without all their resources online. So as much as you guys are struggling, as much as you're feeling it, your teenage is 10 times over because they don't even have all the resources in their head to figure out how to do it. The piece of their brain that is not developed is what we call their prefrontal cortex. It's the front part of their brain here, houses our executive functioning, which is in charge of planning, organizing, memory, behavioral regulation, and emotional regulation. It is also the part that can think and comprehend and process death. That part of the brain is not developed. It is extremely challenging for a teenager who does not have that fully online to understand what's happening, to be able to modify their behaviors, to be able to regulate their emotions, to be able to plan, to be able to execute, to be able to remember something. So, as much as you guys are struggling and as much as that's coming up, your kid is as well. And in a lot of ways, post-grief, post-trauma, we ask our kids to regulate better than we do. We expect them to handle things better than they can, yet they don't even have a fully developed brain to be able to do that. And so there's a big piece in just understanding where your teen is at from a developmental perspective, that this is really challenging and this is really hard for them. And so giving them that space, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but understanding kind of how your teen's operating and where they're at in this. It also means within this, the part of their brain that understands death is what's coming online. It's normal for them to start having and processing thoughts about death, about what it is to die, what it is in these moments. It's also really challenging. So a big piece in this, and we're going to talk about this kind of at the end, and I'm going to look back around, is opening up conversations because their brain is trying to. It's really trying hard to understand and process, but it needs some support in figuring out how to do that. And the biggest resource in supporting that is with you guys, is in the home environment, is in the place that have the most touch points with them. And so how can we start having those? One of the things that I want, and I know that is a topic that has been brought to my attention that you guys want to hear, and I don't want to, I'm gonna put in a couple different pieces in it. What are the things that we can look for? From the clinical psychologist perspective, what are the things that I sit down, and as I sit down with many of the teenagers in this valley, what are the things that I'm looking for, that I'm assessing, that I'm asking in the conversations I'm having? And so one of the big pieces in this is we want to look for, one of the first things that I think is a big piece in talking about this is changes in behavior. For withdrawing, there's hopelessness, worthlessness, comments like that are ones that we want to pay attention to. We listen to, we want to hear. On a grand community scale, we want to hear them, and on a personal family. And if we start hearing these, we want to be able to be available and to be able to hear them. I'm going to talk more about that. But that's one of the big warning signs we look for. One of the things that is a big piece of our teenage world, and I know we often like to say we walked uphill in the snow both ways, and it was super challenging for us as a teenager, but there's a lot of things for our teenagers today that are a lot different than when we were teens. One of the biggest things, I was not a teenager that long ago, but one of the biggest things that we have seen that's a difference in this generation of teenagers in particular is a comment. It's vernacular, it's common. You've probably heard your teen say it, I'm gonna kill myself. It's a common thing that we hear from all our teens. I hear it in the office of the teenagers that come and see me. It's said at school. It is an everyday, common vernacular that was not around when I was a teenager, was not around when you guys were. It is a very common piece of it. And there's a piece in my office with my teenagers that I come in, and as we're joking and we're got a punching bag in my office, we're in there, we're joking around, we're having a good time, those words come out, I stop. And they know it, and they'll look at me and they'll start laughing. They know it's not a joke. It's not something that I will let them just slide off with. It's not something that I say is a funny thing that's okay. It's something that I stop. and they know there's about 3 or 4 questions about to come after. And so I think having these conversations with your teenagers, that these are not okay words, that when they are said, we take them serious at all times, whether it's your friend saying it to you, whether it's your kid saying it in your house, but having that and being aware that these are what our teenagers are saying and using, and that we need to say that this is not, it's not okay to be talking and having these conversations in that way. I mean, we need to take them serious when they do. And so we'll talk about what we can do to take those serious. But that's it. One of the pieces that's really important for us to be paying attention to, and one of the biggest differences we're seeing in the generation that's coming up right now. One of the other ones that I know is a big piece that I want to talk about and hit on is drugs and alcohol with our teenagers. I would not be doing my job if I got up here and said this is not a big piece of being a teenager today. It was at different points in our life, but it is continuing to increase in this valley. It's a major problem. From adults to teenagers, it is one that is very, very high and present. And so what does it look like for us to have these conversations with our teens about drugs and alcohol? In the mental health field, we use a word called harm reductive, which means we know you're doing it. We know it's out there, we know it's available, and if we put a full stop and say, nope, zero tolerance, zero policy, what we're doing is we're actually adding a lot of secrecy, and we're increasing a lot of risk factors. And so what we want to do is we want to open up conversation about these, open up conversation in your family about them, indicate what your family values are around it, and also have a place where your kid knows that if they want and if they go out, that this is still a safe place. The big thing we look at with parents and with support, metaphor of attachment, your kid's in a sailboat, you're the safe dock, you're the docking station for them to come back to, and the safe harbor for them. In their teenage years, they start going out. They start leaving the dock and they start exploring the world in a lot of different areas. That's terrifying as a parent. That is absolutely terrifying. We see the big waves, we see that there's a storm out there, we're telling them no, don't go, don't do it, this is dangerous, this is bad, we know where this is, don't do it. They gotta go out and explore it. And they're going to. And we're gonna watch it, and it's one of the most painful things to do, is when we see and we know it's not a great deal. It's gonna result in whatever. How do we be the safe harbor for them to come back to and know, we're gonna hold you. We're gonna help you come back in. As you go out to explore the world, can you come back? Can you be held in a safe space? Can you know that you're loved and come back into that safe space? A lot of that is surrounding drugs and alcohol too. A lot of research around that, of the more that we can create an open conversations and be a safe harbor, the less risky behaviors there are and the more safety behaviors we have around it. And so paying attention, it is a risk factor for suicide. And so that's a big piece, is we want to pay attention to, yes, drugs and alcohol. Also, your teenager has more access to it than you even have any idea the level of access that they have to it. So it's there, and us pretending like it's not, us pulling a hard line, it's not going to get there. How do we have those conversations? How do we hold them? I think a big piece in this, and this is the take home, is if you know your kid's out there, is going to a party, is being exposed, is in a place, the harm reductive is saying, okay, the next day, guess what we're doing? We're doing family quality time. We're going bowling together. We're going mountain biking. We're gonna go watch a family movie. We're gonna engage you immediately back into that safe harbor to say you are loved, you are cared for, regardless. You are here, and we're gonna be that supportive environment for you to come back to. And that's the biggest thing, and that's my biggest take home I'm gonna say here, is the biggest thing that we can do to support our teens, and what Scott said and what we're gonna hear over and over, is the love and support that they can get at home and from other people in their environment. This is a system approach. There's multiple different people touching your kids in multiple different levels, but the parent support and the family support is more touch points than anything. I can only do about this much work as a clinical psychologist with your team. The impact that I have is so minimal in my limited period of time. The impacts that I get, and this is why I do parent behavioral training, I do parent training. A lot of my work is not actually spent with teenagers or with kids, it's spent working with parents, because they have the most touch points and they have the most access, the most ability to make change in their kids' lives, in their teens' lives, in their emerging adult lives, which we hope that, whatever. The best thing is the support and love at home. And so with that, it's starting to open conversations about this. It's starting to have conversations about, similar to how we do about sex, similar to what we do about drugs and alcohol, having conversations about emotions, about suicide. Naming the word suicide is really, really important. Your kid is going to feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear about coming and talking to you or talking to other people if we're not using that word. There's a lot of research on this. A lot of research has been done. The more that we use and are comfortable saying the word suicide, the reduced of risk we have. A lot of people think if we don't say the word suicide, if we can't say the word suicide because we're putting the thought in their head. We're pushing them towards that, so we need to not. Research continues to indicate it's actually the opposite. The more comfortable we feel naming it, the more comfortable we feel talking about it, the more comfortable they feel coming and talking to us about it. It's the same thing with sex. If you don't say the word sex, your kid's not going to feel comfortable about coming and talking to you about it. So how do we kind of begin and bring these conversations in? How do we open up conversations about what's happening, hold that support, hold that love? I've spent a lot of time this week with the teens here. A lot of time grieving, a lot of times going in to what they're feeling, their anger, their frustration, their hurt, their fear, the different things that are kicking up with them. And one of the biggest things that I'm hearing over and over is the amount of pressure. The pressure our teens are feeling from sports, from school, from family, from life. There's a lot of pressure that's being felt on our teens. Within Love and Support, what you can do to reduce that pressure, for them to know that they feel loved, that they are supported regardless, that we are not holding them to standards, but that they can come and they can feel that support and that sense of release and that safety and that safe harbor. And so what ways can we reduce pressure on them, feelings of overwhelm, help them process those feelings, helping them understand that their brain can't hold them all. And so how do we open up? How do we provide that sense of release? I talk with a lot of teens about pressure cooker and the Instapot. And if we keep building the pressure and they're holding it and holding it, the longer when we hit that release valve, the longer it takes for the release to come down. And a lot of the teens have been building pressure for 9 months, or we're on 8 months of school now. We're towards the end, and there's a lot of pressure being built. And there's a lot of stress and overwhelm in life. And so how can we help them understand and process this? Work through these different emotions in it. The other big piece in Love and Support is, yes, you guys are awesome as the parents, and they love you, even though they might not always say it or act like it. They do, and it's really important. Their peers is super important in the peer group. And this is what we see developmentally with teenagers over and over and over again, is their peer group is number one. And their peer group is really where they go to learn social support, to have an outlet, to learn social skills. And it's really important for them to continue to engage with their friends. If they're choosing to talk with their friends instead of you, or want to go hang out with their friends instead of you, that's normal and that's okay. And that's actually where a lot of their grieving and their processing is going to come from. So opening up the space for them to be with each other, to be in those support groups, it's why we're hoping to do more to the level of support within those groups. Because in that group oriented with the peers, it's super important. It's why in 2020, for those of us who were child adolescent psychologists and psychiatrists, 2020 was very concerning when we went in. Because teenagers, even in the best situation, teenager being at home with their parents all the time, not great. Not great for the parent, not great for the teen. It's really important for them to be around their peers. Really important to have that social support. So the degree that you guys can, opening up those channels and being okay if they want to talk to their peers more than you. And if they want to open up and have those conversations with them instead of coming home and having them with you, that's okay too. But knowing that they have that safe harbor, that if they have a conversation with a friend that doesn't go well, they can come back and talk to you about it. And so with that kind of tying it up here, what do we do when we're actually concerned? We have therapy options within Vail Health, within your school. There's a lot of different options there. There is the Hope Center. This is our crisis center up here in the valley. Their number, I'll give it to you now, I'll give it to you again. So they've got a website, it's called Your Hope Center, 970-306-4673. They are a 24/7 crisis line that will call and that will respond. It is free service for everyone in this community, and they're actively engaged. That's calling for your kid, calling for a friend, calling because a friend of your kids, being there, engaging with your Hope Center where you need it, calling 911, 988. It's your national suicide hotline. You guys haven't seen it probably because nobody looks there anymore. Your phone bill, your cell phone bill has a new charge that got put on it last July. And it's for our national suicide hotline, which is 988. It's a text and call service that anybody, anywhere in the country can call this, similar to 911, but it's for suicide. Having that number, knowing how to use it for yourself, for another person, and engaging in that resource. And the biggest thing is the community. This is a systems approach. This is multiple levels. You're here for your kid. You're also here for your friend's kid. You're also here for the other parents here. It's coming together as a group of community of parents, community of teenagers, community of Eagle County up here, and how do we come together as a community to support each other? From my training and talk and my passion, and the reason why I work with adolescents is similar to what Scott was talking about. It's stacking the stands. The more people that we can have stacking these kids' stands, being in their corner, cheerleading them on, that is what, time and time again, is the biggest protective factor for so many things for teenagers. It's my big research interest, social support, and how do we increase and stack the stands for these kids? How do we show up, not just for our kid, but for our friends, our kids' friends, for this community? How do we continue to show up and be engaged and have that involvement across the community? Because that, again, like I said, it's the biggest protective factor that we can have, is that social support on so many different levels. So that's what I have. I think we are going to open it up for Q&A. Is that correct, Michael? So if you guys have questions for me, for Scott, we do have time for that. I will also be hanging around if you guys have more personal questions to engage in. But
so how do you respond to, my child came home last night and, 2 months ago as well, they're asking why. Why are they choosing to do this?
Yeah.
And I respond with, I don't know. We don't know the answers.
Yeah. So the question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, the question is, how do we respond when our kid comes home and says why? Why did this happen? How do we respond back to those comments? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what you said in that is, I don't know. I think as adults, again, our prefrontal cortex is developed. We can hold, there's a lot of things in this world we don't know. I can tell you a lot of different scientific things about why this world operates the way it does. I don't know. And the biggest thing we can do is hold the I don't know with them. And I think that's the big piece of saying, honoring your own. I don't think there's a person in this room that hasn't had that hasn't held a why either in the last 2 days, the last month, or across your life. So how do we say, yeah, we have to hold space for that. And we have to hold and say that this is a really hard emotion to sit in. And I think a lot of that's the safe harbor, to say, let's sit in the safe harbor together and say, why? It's a hard one. And it requires a big piece of that, is it requires a lot from us to also be able to sit in that. Because we have to be willing to go to that place with them and to sit in that place alongside them. And a lot of times in grief, that's the best thing we can do. It's not the casserole that we bring, but it's coming alongside and it's saying, this sucks. So, yeah, question back.
You mentioned the pressure cooker type emotions for our kids.
Yeah.
So what is the best way to approach that conversation when we know that that's happening?
Yeah.
What do we say or do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think, again, as adults, a lot of us have learned to handle really stressful lives in different ways. We've learned how to, through having kids, figuring out how to handle the multiple different aspects of stress and the feelings of overwhelm and how we manage through them. Your teenagers learn how to do that, and their brain's not developed to be able to do that. That emotion regulation is not there. So how do we help coach them and how to manage pressure, how to ask for things that they need taken off, how to hold the space of, okay, you're feeling really overwhelmed and pressured. Do you need a mental health day? Do you need time for us just to sit and to find play and to find fun, because it's really hard. Our kids are expected with school, and I say this to in a lot of my parent training, most of us go to jobs all day, every day. We work 40 hours, whatever it is. We get a nice little paycheck every 2 weeks. It says, hey, good job, this is why you're doing this. Our teens are doing a lot of stuff without a lot of reward or motivation. And so I think a piece of when they call out, we also have PTO, a lot of us. We take time off, we take time to recover. We have weekends, we have whatever. Our teens are often pushed to the point they don't. So how do we learn to see those warning signs of, hey, you're starting to feel overwhelmed? You know your kid better than anyone. You know their feelings of overwhelm. You can see it. What can I do to help reduce that? What ways can I bring play in? What ways can I bring joy in? What can I incorporate into their life to help bring them down? I know they had a really hard day. What's the treat that we can go get? What's the thing that we can do to provide that support and to say, hey, I see you. I see that this pressure is building. What are the things that you need to do that? And how do we start coaching the kids to start asking for that too? I mean, and that's a big second step of it. But right now, it's not about them asking. It's about us just doing and saying, we know that there's overwhelm. We know there's pressure. What ways can we reduce that? What ways do we know? You know your kids better than anything. You know the ways to come alongside them, to bring them a little bit of reprieve, to bring them joy, to bring them laughter, to give them time and space to be able to come down, to have an exhale. If you need creative ideas of thinking of those, I'm around after and we can brainstorm together, because there's a lot of different ideas. But yeah, providing those, you know your kid. And I think trusting that, yeah.
And I would say too, like you have to be very direct with them. Like my son last night, I was like, get on the ground right now. Like here's some yoga blocks, here's a foam roller, like get on the ground. He's like, no way, this is weird. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Get on the ground. Like I know better than you right now. Your brain is not functioning properly.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be very direct
Yeah.
with them sometimes and tell them what to do because they don't know what to do.
And when they're emotionally dysregulated, that part of their brain that is logic, so that prefrontal cortex, is not there. That is our logic and language and our ability to regulate emotions. That's the piece that's underdeveloped. What we also know in this other piece of teenager is their motion center of the brain is very much online. That is where they process their world, is through emotions. We have done brain scans with teenagers and adults. This is one of my favorite fun facts. Where we put a teenager in a brain scan and we put an adult, and we show them a happy face, a sad face, an angry face, and a neutral face. The part of the adult brain that lights up every time that they see a face and emotion, front part of the brain, logic. That's happy, that person's happy. Sad, that person's sad. Neutral, okay, that person's in a neutral emotion. What pops up on a teenager's brain is the emotion center of the brain. They are processing somebody's emotional reaction through their emotions. Interesting enough, their neutral face pops up the exact same cycle as an angry face. That's why when you have neutrality, your kid often thinks you're pissed. It's why messages like, hey, don't go over well. Because they don't understand neutrality, because neutrality requires logic, and it's not there. So they're processing their world through emotions. So when their emotions and they're hidden, they don't have logic. That's not the time for us as parents, by parent coaching. When they are in emotion brain, it's not the time to say, hey, did this work out for you last time? Did this get you what you wanted last time you tried this? They're not going to be receptive to that because their logic's not there. They're in full emotion brain. So when they're in emotion brain, we just need to tell them, hey, you're emotional, you're overwhelmed, you need to sit down, you need to eat. Here's your food, you gotta eat. Because you're so emotional right now that you can't process it, you can't think it through. Whether it's sitting on the ground and needing to do grounding, whether it's needing to take time off, whether it's needing to go someplace where they want to say, I don't want to go. I'm a teenager and I'm going to be a stick in the mud just because I want to be a stick in the mud. Nope, sorry, we're doing this because I know you need it. I know your emotion brain's high, your logic's not there. We're going to provide that. So I love that. Other questions?
I'm just wondering, in my logical brain, part of it is to build up resilience. Like, things go wrong, you can't always be a winner, you can't have everything. So how do you have that tool to teach?
How do you balance resilience with reducing pressure? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, just resilience in general, like
Yeah.
if it doesn't go your way, you can't be impulsive.
Yeah. And I think a piece of, so that impulsivity that comes up with teenagers is also like, that's a part of the brain here. That's the prefrontal cortex. So that comes online as that brain develops, which is why we see in males that happens later in life and they tend to be a little bit more impulsive longer than females, but because that brain develops longer. So impulsivity does go down with age in general. Resilience is an important piece of saying, yeah, resilience. How do we teach more resilience in our kids? And how do we continue to push and indicate that? And I think there's a lot of different, that's a very complex way of doing that. And I think there's a lot of it's situational, a lot of it's time and place, and a lot of it's knowing what they can and can't. And so I think that's an incredibly hard question. I think this is one of it, and I say this because it's a big topic of research in adolescent development right now, is how do we push towards resilience and how do we push towards grit? A lot of that is letting, kind of on that safe harbor, letting them go out, knowing that they can come back. Letting them kind of make those mistakes, letting them kind of have moments of figuring it out and coming back to the safe harbor and knowing they have it. And so that builds a lot of resilience. So saying, okay, I know I can go out and I can take a risk because I know I've got a safe place to come back to. I know I can do because I know there's a safe place. And that builds a lot of resilience and a lot of persistence in that. But I think also it's having those conversations. Your teen's really responsive to being engaged in adult conversations now. We want to build resilience. How do we build resilience in you? We want to balance this between you. How can we do this together? Bringing that piece in, having those conversations with your teen is a piece of that. And that's the love and that's the support, is starting to have those. We want you to be resilient. We want you to go out, but we also recognize you have limits. And help us figure those out because you're starting to launch. A lot of these teenagers are starting to launch. We want to start building those scaffolding of saying, what does resilience look like? And what is also saying, like, I need a moment. And we got to balance that. And we got to have those conversations with them to really figure it out. So
So I think a lot of people are looking for a game plan. I think there's something that needs to go forward after this. And especially hearing you say teens are having a 10 times harder time because it's not developed.
yeah.
Processing this overwhelming beyond crisis. So, I know we got Pat's email today about the Howard Head sports psychologist that's going to be there every Wednesday from 8 to 10 or whatever. So that's a piece, a weekly piece that the boys will have. And I know that I'm working on getting something weekly that the boys can rely on and have each week they know that they're going to have something to be able to go to process at least for a month. So I think we're all looking for a plan to help these kids process, but they're not able to process.
Yeah. Yeah, and what are kind of action steps forward? And I think there's a lot of, we've got signups in the back for you guys to sign up for your own, for kids having support, so we can continue to, and we can find ways to support, pulling in groups, pulling in the supports in that, having the conversations. I think a lot of it is in this room at this moment is what we want to, what is in our kind of control right now. What are in our particular boots on the ground here in the moment, and after these moments of community, there's the long term where we do go down and we want to think, and there's also right now. And your teenagers, the kids are right now. And so what are the conversations you can go home and you can have tonight? What's the ways that you can show your teenager love and support tonight? What's the ways that you can have that and begin? Because I think those are the boots on the ground moments. And I think moving forward, yes, there's programming, there's bringing in sports psychologists, there's opening resources, there's having that, and there's the movements that are coming down the line that we want to, yes, continue to be in, continue to provide support in this community and find, and also we're rattled and we're in that, and we're in how do we take the next step forward. I quote with a lot of my kids and teenagers to their dismay, Frozen 2 has a really great song in it. What's the next right step? And sometimes we like to go 20 steps down, but right now, what's the next right step? What's the thing that I can do right now to take that next right step, to show support, to show love to my kid, to the kids in this community, to the other parents? What's the next thing? What's the next right thing that I can do? And in those moments, taking the time to pause and just say, okay, everything else is super daunting and super hard right now. What's the next right step? And that's a lot with my teenagers. What's the next thing you need? You're leaving my office. What do you need to do in the next hour? Not the next 5 hours, not tonight, not tomorrow. What do you need to leave here and go do for the next hour to help yourself, to get into a good spot, to take that step? And so sometimes it's minute by minute, sometimes it's hour by hour, sometimes it's day by day. But what's the next right step? And how do we do that? And so I think within that, the next right step right now is we're opening the conversation. We're coming together tonight to say, we want to support, we want to be here. What's the next right step we can take?
So I'm not going to use that microphone. I prefer to shout. But for purposes of recording, I will use the microphone. I have 3 PhDs. Just kidding, I don't have any of those. But you know, as we were processing this, and here's my deal. I've very rarely spoken without having plenty of time to prepare, and this is the most unprepared speech of my life. But I feel somewhat prepared. I don't think that's going to work right there. So I have notes, and Michael asked me to whittle my talk down to 2 hours. So here we go. First of all, welcome to the Vail Church. Vail Church brought me out here 17 years ago. So this has kind of been, I've got a long history right here. We got coffee and water out there. If you need to go to the bathroom, literally just go out to the right, and it's there in the hallway. But wait to go to the bathroom for my 2 hours, and then when she gets up, you are free to go to the bathroom. Trying to make some comic relief. Here's where I wanted to start. I told Michael, he was like, I'm going to get emotional. I was like, so am I. And I think a lot of us are. As I was putting together in the last 24 hours what I wanted to say, I had my script, and I went on a bike ride at 4 o'clock, and some of that script got clearer. My opening statement is that God loves you. All of you. And your kids. More than you. I want that to be the opening of a very emotional time. And the conversations and the text messages from y'all, there's a lot of pain that I am leaning on God in this time. And if you've been through some of this before, a lot of times the only place you can look is up. And so my beginning is I want to kind of spend a little bit and share a little bit of my 17 years in this valley and what I've seen and am seeing. And tonight we are scratching the surface. And I'm hoping we're beginning a conversation that maybe should have started 10 years ago, but tonight it starts here, and we're going to start figuring things out as we move forward. I talked to Scott Bamford about 45 minutes ago, and I said, hey, well, you know, how are you? And when I left, I was at the hospital. I left yesterday at 4 o'clock. And I left, and I had Amy in this arm and Scott in this arm, and then Megan, their daughter, in front of me. And Seth was still in the same, unconscious. And we just hugged and we prayed and we said, Lord, we're begging and asking for a miracle right now. And everyone's crying, and then an hour and a half later I get the text that, and you probably got the same text. I think we all forwarded it. And I said, I bet that text went to 1,000 people in under, I'm not kidding, I bet it went to 1,000 people in under 2 minutes. Because everyone just shot it out, and it was like, oh my gosh. And he said, he's up and talking, or he's awake and talking. And we all just went, thank God. I told him 45 minutes ago, I said, do you know what's going on right now? Like, I almost said, I'm kind of busy. We got people showing up, I gotta go. But I said, we're about to have, we don't know how many people showing up at the Vail Church, and we're gonna start talking about what do we need to do as a community. And I met them 17 years ago here, and Megan was a middle schooler and I was her student pastor. And we ran around and played hide and seek and all sorts of stuff, and that's where I first met them. And so to go from that memory to then showing up at 12:30 in that place was really, really, really difficult. And so Scott said, I'm going to be praying for y'all. So Scott's at the hospital right now praying for us. Is that amazing? And wait, no, we're praying for you. He's like, no, I'm praying for y'all. Because he's looking to this, and I'm sure Amy is too, and I'm sure Megan's right there, and they're having a time right now. I have a short, great story. Elon Musk, he's a huge name. This is my short sermon. But the first sermon I ever preached was right here, like 17 years ago, so it's kind of fun to be up here. Elon Musk is a huge name, and Elon Musk has done a lot, and he has he has a voice in the politics. He has done everything under the sun that you could imagine, right? The money, the fame, the people, the parties, all this sort of stuff. A couple thousand years ago, there was a man named in Israel, David, King David. If you fly into Tel Aviv, you're going to land at David Ben Gurion Airport, and the flag of David, right? The Star of David is their flag, and it's staring at you. And David, the king, had a son named Solomon. And I equate a lot of Solomon to Elon Musk, because Solomon was said to be brilliant out of his mind. He was extremely wealthy. And he had all of that fame, fortune, and stuff. And what's fascinating is at the end of his life, he wrote a short book. And I want to read you a few things because I think this is where we sit, and at least this is what's on my heart of as I look at this valley 17 years and what's going on. And I read his lines, and I think it's super pertinent to where we are. So he basically says, I had master's degrees. He said, I went after knowledge. I wanted to learn everything, and knowledge didn't satisfy me. He said, and so I went after, and I had money, and I had homes I had homes in Beaver Creek, Maui, you pick the places. He said, I had everything. And he said, I had parties for days. And he writes, and he basically said, I had the most hedonistic life, and anything I wanted, I had. And I could do anything. I had male and female servants waiting on me hand and foot. I had more flocks. I had everything. I acquired male and female singers, and I had a harem of women, the delight of a man's heart. This is what he writes. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. But when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had worked so hard to achieve, I saw it was meaningless, and I was empty and dissatisfied. Everything that a lot of us strive for and want, he had. And I hated my life. It was all meaningless. In the last verse of chapter 2, after he finishes this looking back, he says, and what I see was a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their life, the people you're around, your family, your friends. And then he says for the first time, this I see is from the hand of God. And from there he shifts to everything I was doing without God about killed me. And then I leaned into something else, and his life changed. And for me, working with kids for so long here, and now with men, and I've seen this in this valley. Happy Valley, right? For those of us that have been here for a long time, we look around and we go, maybe not so much. We have a lot that, people from all over the world are coming over here, but we live here and we go, there's still a lot of pain. And my push as I look at this, I go, I think there's a spiritual side, right? And then there's an emotional side of how are we going to deal with this? And I'm going to speak to the first half. And I have a few points and I'm almost done. In 1996 in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up, there was this man that would come to our high school. I thought it was really odd. He was about 35. bald, wire-rimmed glasses, and he was not a coach. He was not a teacher. He did not have a kid there. He wasn't a big brother. And he would walk on my high school, 5,000 kid public school campus. And kids would flock to him. And I was always like, who is this man? Why does everyone know him? I go to a football game, Friday Night Lights in Texas, it's a big deal. He would walk into the student section and everybody wanted Tiger to sit with him, Tiger Dawson. And then one day, I got invited to go to Young Life, which I had never heard of. But Linda and Ashley, right? Let me tell you about Linda and Ashley. They're beautiful. They invited Andy, who invited me, and we showed up at a Young Life Club, didn't know what it was. And after some fun songs and, somebody got pied in the face and we laughed, Tiger, the mystery man to me, stood up, pulled out a Bible, read a few verses about Jesus, and closed in prayer. And I went to my first youth group activity that I wanted to be at that my mom didn't force me to go to, and it changed my life. So much so that 15 years go by and my first job was a Young Life leader. And one of the hard things of this valley, again, I did this for 15 years and here for over a decade, here at the Vail Church, Vail Christian High School, and Young Life in the Vail Valley, this is what I did. I chased kids. And I wasn't a parent. I wasn't a teacher. Even when I was a teacher, I made them call me by my first name. And I signed, I love this. This is significant to me. When I went on staff at Vail Christian High School, I had the principal sign that I could wear t-shirts and jeans to class and a backwards hat. Because I said, I don't want to be in khakis and a button-up, because I want these kids to see me as their big brother and their friend, not as, Pastor Leonard, may I go to the bathroom? And I built friendships with kids for a long time. And guess what? I was there for the good times, which made the bad times, I was so accessible. And this is student ministry across this planet of somebody who's there 365 days a year. And they're actually there more for, I would tell parents, hey, we're taking your kids to camp and it's $500. But here's what your $500 gets you. 365-day access to me and my friends who were in their 20s and they don't have kids and mortgages and they like to ski, shoot baskets, and they're at basketball games, football games, soccer club, lunch. They're bringing donuts to school in the morning. And that, to me, I look at this valley and I go, here's where we need to put some resource and effort and time and hire some kids. Really fun. So Ben Dodds, where are you? I want you to, so Ben Dodds, we met going on Young Life staff 20 years together. And Ben Dodds leads up Young Life. And in a month and a half, we have a awesome girl coming from Baylor University, my alma mater, moving up here, anyone else, to chase after kids, to love on kids all day, every day. And I go, let's get like 7 of them. Let's get a couple guys, a couple gals, and let's find a place where they can call home and they can drop in whatever. And when they show up, kids go, hey, because they show up and they're like, hey, I got free donuts. What do kids want? Free donuts. Okay? Matt Ponifus, raise your hand. Give us a wave. Matt just came from Battle Mountain High School baseball. And Matt spends a whole lot of time with high school kids. When Matt walks into a school, they know him. How can we get 5 more Matts? Justin and Katie. Hi. Justin and Katie, this is fun. So when I heard about Justin, I was like, I love this guy. Hadn't even met him yet because he has the job I had 17 years ago. And I'm like, bro, we should hang out. And these two are starting to chase after kids in the Vail Valley. And when I look at what's going on with high school kids, I mean, I tell people, I don't have skinny jeans and a skateboard. I am irrelevant to these kids. I'm not as cool and I'm a dad. And my son's like, actually, I don't want you coming on campus and being like, what's up? I got a hat that's just like my son's hat, and it's cool. He did not think it was cool that I had his cool hat on at the lacrosse game. He was like, hey, maybe not anymore. And I was like, okay. But if they wear it, it's really cool. There's my first point. I'm down to an hour and a half. This is where we really need to lean in. Getting some people to run after our kids. Dads. I have men in our groups, probably 85 to 100 men on any given week. Multiple groups. We have guys in there who have never seen the inside of a church. We have men in there who have never missed church. And we just get together as dads for an hour from 7:30 to 8:30 on any given morning. And, guys have their groups, and these are their groups, and it was great. This morning, Joel and I are sitting together in our group, and Joel said, Sunday night, it was big. He goes, my first text message was to the group. Hey guys, we need to pray, because there's a kid from Battle Mountain who's on a flight for life to Denver. And it was on it, got it, praying now, oh my gosh. And I go, we had support. And so on any given morning of the week, we got guys all over beliefs, all over, from all over the country, the most varied group of dads. And we go, how you doing? What's going on? And it's sports updates on kids. It's, I slept on the couch last night. Me too. Oh my gosh, marriage is tough. And we just kind of do life together. And what's funny is I get a lot of calls from wives going, oh, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Like, my husband is a little more even keel. Thank you. And I'm like, you're welcome. Like, amen. Because what we've noticed, moms, raise your hand if you're on a text list with a bunch of moms. Dads, raise your hand if you're on a text message with a bunch of dads. Okay? Not many, right? Women are going to do that, but guys, we're less likely. And so, one of my things is, regardless of where you are, what you believe, what's going on, we'd love to have you jump in a group. It's awesome. And so you're gonna have a chance to, get information or call me, and I'm like, let's do lunch, let's do coffee, let's do whatever. But dads need dads to encourage them. Dads, how much is your high school son talking to you? Is he just a talky, chatty boy right now? No. Hey, it was really good for me to find that out from 8 other dads who said, oh yeah, he's a freshman. He's pretty quiet. And I went, okay, this is okay. But I'm still there, and I'm leaning into my son, and loving him. Hey, give me a hug. I know you don't want to give me a hug. Give me a hug. Dads, we need each other. Our kids need each other. Our kids need some people to look up to and start running after. And that's going to be my charge. That's going to be one of the charges I'm going to be a part of going, how do we get someone at all the high schools to just love and run after our kids? Here's my closing 4 sentences. 1 a.m. Sunday morning, or I don't even know my days, I'm looking at YouTube because you were there with me in the hospital. And we just grabbed the 6 boys' hands who were around us, and the few dads the people who showed up at 1 a.m. in Denver, and I was like, let's pray. And we held hands, and I don't know where everybody was at there, but everybody said that was really good. And I want to send a challenge out. I would love to invite you all to come to this church on Sunday with your kids. Because after 15 years of doing student ministry with kids want to go where kids are. My daughter, I was a student pastor 15 years. My daughter was like, I don't want to go to church. I want to sleep in. I work on Saturday. I go to school in the mornings. It's my one day. But I know if there were 25 other kids here, she'd be like, hey, we're going to the 8 o'clock service or the 9:30? Because she's a kid, she wants to be with her people. And I look and I go, hey, this is how we can start something really, really significant, not just for them, but for all of us. Closing statement. Jesus said, come to me, when you are burdened and tired, and you will find rest for your soul. And so I told these boys at the hospital, I said, hey guys, I don't know where you are, but I want to encourage you to lean on Jesus, to lean into God, and to begin something. And so some said, absolutely, when can we hang out? And so on Thursday, I'm getting with some of these guys just to see what's going to happen. So there's my encouragement. Thank you for being here. My 7 minutes are up.
Thanks, Scott.